Backstage at Buffer Festival here with Rick. Tell me a little bit about what you're here today, the company, and what you guys do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm with Kin Community, which we're experts in social video across all platforms, focused on lifestyle. We have offices around the world, which I oversee, and then our headquarters are based in LA.
Nice.
So obviously part of Buffer as the conversation continues to evolve here in Canada.
So would you talk a little bit about today? What were some of the topics that you're in your...
Our conversation was really around working with creators,
Yeah.
and I think probably you find in your experience too that I still find when we're working with brands specifically, their level of knowledge varies so greatly.
Oh, yeah,
that you have
sure.
some in the space that, like Mary, that really knew what they're doing, and then you have others that I'm sometimes surprised by how much their strategy still has to evolve in terms
Yeah.
of the way they look at the
Yeah.
space and approach the space. So we really just talked about working with creators, what content really means. I'm sure you've heard too, there's
Yeah.
lots of conversations around content and content being king and the intersection between that and data and ROI. So it's the same conversation, but it is evolving.
Right. So when you're like working with the influencers, creators to create this content, right, and working with brands, what are those sort of three things that you sort of look at as success factors
Sure.
and what people need to look at when they get in this? Because like your point, there's so many different types of influencers, there's different levels, there's different types of creative, brands are all over the place. It's as much as we've evolved, it's still kind of a hot mess.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I don't blame brands for being
Not at all.
confused. Like,
It's like-
you know, when you even look at the intersection, you're like, what does a creative agency manage versus a media agency versus PR agency, and they all kind of have their hands in the same pie.
And everyone's trying to do the same thing.
You're right, and it becomes, and
Right.
they all have different KPIs, and they all have different things
Right.
that they're trying to achieve, and so oftentimes it makes a bit of a mess. And we found in our experience, just with Kin, that the best success we have are either A, where we work directly with brands, and we can help them think about it holistically right from the get-go, or the brand is the wherewithal to say, all right, all of our agencies and the creators, if they're working with creators, everyone's getting in a room, and we're gonna figure this out from the beginning and come up with a strategy that works.
Yep.
And what I'm encouraged by, at least, is it does feel like there's a bit of an evolution in terms of people thinking about platforms and what content goes on what platforms holistically, as opposed to, oh, we'll do something for Snapchat, here's this. Oh, we'll do something for Instagram, here's this. That from the idea, from the conception stage,
Yep.
it really is, what does this look like on Instagram? What does, versus even Instagram on just photos versus story? What does it look like on Snapchat? And how does that influence the sort of creation process? And I always find that that's kind of where the meat and the heart of it is.
And how it all connects.
Yeah,
Right.
and I do feel like and I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like there really is sort of a collapsing of some of the older models, sort of a convergence of, you know, all the different platforms, linear versus digital, traditional talent versus creator
Right, no,
talent.
absolutely.
Like, it's all becoming so murky, and I think out of that something really great will come.
So one of the things that I ranted about a lot, I talked about today a little bit, was, and I'd love to get your perspective of why, is that brands continue to spend a significant amount of money on interrupted marketing.
Yeah.
Banner ads. Things no one likes, right? Even some of the interruptive spots in a sense, right? All the way to TV. I talked a little bit about how TV can still be effective. It's not about bashing it, but the creative's gotta be good.
Yeah.
So is it just the system they know? What is it that they keep putting money in there? Because to me, it's really perplexing.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's just what they know. And I think it also speaks to, you know, media buyer, that's what they're being measured on, right? And that's sort of what they're going to go with. You know, to your point too about broadcast, I mean, yes, broadcast is evolving, but there's still some ways that it's highly effective. Call to action on broadcast,
Yep.
super highly effective.
Right.
And so I do think that there is sort of an evolution there, and where it ends up, I'm not sure. But I agree with you as in rant, like it is really narrow focus in terms of thinking about your planning,
Right.
to actually just sort of think about being disruptive. That the most successful ones, and we say this all the time, but it's where it's sort of genuinely organic, genuinely placed, there's genuine brand affinity. And I think this is some of the really great work you did with Mary. I remember you once talking about your work there, and you actually said, look, I don't care if you mention my brand. This is really about the experience you're having,
Yep.
and it's loosely tied to that.
Right.
And I think that was very insightful on your part. But I think what it takes to do that is a brand that's willing to have like sort of a long-term investment in
Right,
something.
absolutely.
That if you got a one-off campaign, at the end of it, you're being measured on X,
Yep.
that kind of thinking and that forces you to be disruptive.
Yeah. So what's something you guys have just worked on that you're excited about?
Geez, a whole bunch of stuff, to be honest.
Gotta pick one.
Gotta pick one. I know, I won't rant too long. We just launched a really awesome project last week with Amazon.
Yep.
And like a lot of companies in the space, we're sort of constantly evolving. You know, we started off on YouTube and now we're on across multiple platforms, creating content across multiple platforms. So we did a campaign with them, with one of our biggest creators, Rosanna Pensino. We've done this project with her in the past. Pretty standard makeover format. It is what it is, but what's the added layer to it that's interesting is you're sort of leveraging all of their audience in a meaningful way, but then also making it highly shoppable. And also the fact that it's living on Amazon as a platform. I think, we increasingly talk about this in our company anyways, that Amazon's sort of like the one to keep an eye on. I think that I'm sure you agree that they have the knowledge and expertise, and they're gonna create some pressure there.
Yeah, and I think that shopping idea, right, is key because it's not, I don't think it's interruptive.
Yeah.
If they're already watching the content, it's something that you've engaged, that they're obviously interested in watching.
Yeah.
It's informing them, it's entertaining them,
Yeah.
and it's another way to keep them engaged.
Did you see one of the things that caught my eye recently? There was a documentary called, I believe it was called Jeff's Boots. I might be wrong, but it was with REI. And it was about this guy who was basically, he died of a heart attack. He was going to do this big long hike, sort of that he'd done in his early years, and he bought some hiking boots, passed away. His wife called into a podcast, said, I just want his boots to go on this hike. And if someone is willing, I'd love it if you could take my boots across the journey he wasn't able to do. And they turned it into the most powerful moving documentary. I mean, I'm a bit of a suck, but I literally in 3 minutes, I was like, oh my God. But at the end of it, literally, it was just that the brand's name came up.
Yep.
And I was like, you've got me. It wasn't here's why I love these hiking boots from REI. It was literally, you made something I cared about, you made something that moved me. It was long form. And then you sort of built a loyalty to me, and I can't even shop them. They're not here in Canada. But now when I go to the US, I definitely keep my eyes out.
Yeah, it's the idea that the brand enabled the story.
Yeah.
That happened, right? All right, well, I'm holding him up from drinks outside, so thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We're going to head back out.